needed to record to the cloud. And I don't know if I should do. Okay. Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavatam Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Muninam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vritavarshini Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishana Buddhe Pulla Ravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Parnaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamrudaduhe Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyah Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So welcome everyone to the almost concluding verses of the ninth chapter. I know we didn't have 2 weeks of the sessions, mainly because we had the 108th Jayanti of Swami Chinmayananda, coinciding with the Jayanti of Bhagwan Adi Shankaracharya of his birthday, which happened on 12th this year. So between May to 8th, 12th, we didn't have that. And then the next week, we had this major national conference on Indian knowledge systems. So it's been back to back to back. We've been having a lot of, everything connected with, I guess, Indian knowledge systems, all the way from, our the Jayantis of our Mahatmas. And just yesterday, we concluded another 3-day full program where at our university here, we were giving the wisdom of the ages, training for all faculty, so it's an amazing initiative where the core principles of Vedanta have been distilled in such a way that all the faculty, gets this idea. So that's been like back to backs. So now we are here today. So towards the end of the 9th chapter. So what is this chapter about? This chapter is about actually the glory of devotion. And that is really the ultimate aspect which he's coming to, because this is the second half of the 18 chapters. And in this chapter, it's basically about Bhakti Yoga, which finally will culminate in the 12th chapter, like we have said before. So yes, there is about 34 verses. We will do between 30, from 30 onwards, we'll start, of course. We'll look into details 31, 32, 33 today. And just as a kind of reflection, as we know that in the previous chapters, Krishna had talked about the endless cycle of creation, dissolution, etc. So in this chapter, he actually starts off with saying that he wants to reveal this profound secret knowledge to Arjuna, which would allow him to really get out of this endless cycle of creation and dissolution. So, how does he do that? He says ultimately that knowledge that he wants to give him is really nothing but the devotion and bhakti towards that Ishvara. So, it is really the easiest means of obtaining liberation. And it's easier than even performing any kind of karmas in the world. Of course, for all of us, because we have so much of rajas in us, we have to first subdue that. And to subdue that, we have to do the right kind of karmas, which will allow us to kind of calm that energy within us. And after that, we come to this aspect of bhakti. But in order to really practice bhakti, we need to know we need to have some knowledge. And that is that knowledge which Krishna says is that profound secret. And what is that knowledge? The knowledge is that ultimately that Ishvara is the cause of the whole universe. Everything is actually sustained in that Ishvara. Everything is in Ishvara. Just like we say that the wind is in space. We are not able to see the wind, but we can feel the wind. So too, we may say that, well, Ishvara, the God principle, I'm not able to feel, but I can feel the effects of that Ishvara, right? So we're not able to see that Ishvara because our senses are so preconditioned. It can only perceive names and forms. So, for example, if I have the cup in front of me, I can perceive that. I can perceive the spoon. I can do all that. But in order to be able to perceive Ishvara, we need to go beyond the names and forms. That is the most important thing. So, in order to get to beyond the names and forms, I need to be able to know that there is something beyond the names and forms that is there, and that can happen through this means of bhakti. So, Ishvara is the ultimate cause of the universe, and he or she exhibits that power through this prakriti. And it is through this prakriti he creates this whole world of names and forms. He sustains them and eventually also dissolves them. That is the whole aspect which we are learning about. And that is why it is important for us to know about that Ishvara. And what is really this prakriti? It is ultimately the sattva, rajas, tamas. And it is a fully kind of an automated system. It is an automated system where everything that we do is within that system, which then, through our own action, it delivers the actions back to us. But we don't know this, right? We see things happening and we think that these happenings are outside us and we get affected by it. But then this is how we kind of get stuck in the system. But with this knowledge, we'll be able to move out and we'll be able to really get out of this aspect of selfish actions, right? So, in order to free ourselves from this, is where this aspect of bhakti is needed for us to be able to surrender to that ultimate principle. So, in order to do that, first we have to get rid of a lot of these misconceptions that Ishvara is really another finite human entity that is going beyond the forms. The second misconception is this: I am this body, mind, intellect, and the sense organs are given to me. And it is only through these senses that I can perceive. And if I don't perceive through the senses, I don't believe in it. That's another misconception that our philosophy is asking us to get out of it. So, one by one, with these kind of misconceptions being destroyed, one can actually get to uh, experience. But when I use the word experience, I have to be careful that it is not through the senses or anything. It is in that ultimate state of meditation that I can actually experience that Ishvara. So this is just to give you a kind of a nutshell on what we have talked about in this chapter 9. I just wanted to bring that together. I want to open up to all of you. If you have any things that you have gathered in this reflection of chapter 9. If not, we can move on. So whatever I just kind of briefly summarized towards the end of it, we talked about the two kind of bhaktas, the bhakta which is approaching that Ishvara. When we talked about Ishvara, who is who is in front of us in the form of this prakriti of names and forms, and we who are part of it can approach this Ishvara through two different ways. One of it is by approaching that Ishvara with something in mind, and that is the Sakama Bhakta we talked about. And this Sakama Bhakta is the one who is a desire-oriented Bhakta, who performs all these rituals so that he can attain heaven after his death. But ultimately, he comes back to the earth because he would have gained certain merits, and all those merits are then exhausted and he comes back. Now, the next one is the Nishkama Bhakti, or the desireless devotee who wants only that Ishvara. So again, this is an evolution for us. First, we are looking at desires to fulfill only for myself. Then I evolved to a part where I'm looking at my family, my community, my, what should I say, my county, my state. And ultimately, so that desire gets diluted more and more and more. Ultimately, you come to this aspect of the Nishkama Bhakta. So Ishvara always, of course, at the ultimate level, takes care of those desireless devotees by giving them whatever they need at the right point of their lives, including, food, shelter, wealth, whatever you need. So that is the level that our philosophy is saying that we need to push our devotion to. And in this section of 26 to 28, we think that we can bribe Ishvara to get whatever we want. But essentially, this philosophy, we see that Ishvara really does not expect any big offerings when we worship him. In fact, he's so satisfied. He's satisfied with just simple things like, water, a leaf, patram, pushpam, panam, toyam. That is what we saw in these shlokas. We can even offer our work and action to him. So just by serving in whatever station we have, we can actually get to that level. So all he's asking is that just to have that bhavam, that feeling of devotion. And whenever we make any offering, so anything we offer it in the spirit of surrender. So in that sense, and then finally he says that Ishvara is really not partial. As much as we are offering with a sense of devotion, Ishwar's, he's really not, he's not partial only to those who offer with devotion. It's all he's saying is that, he's there available, just like we have given this example before of sunlight. The sunlight is available to everybody. It is a matter of us opening the windows in order to allow the sunlight to come in. So that's where we came with here. And finally, in the last shlokas 29-30, we see that again, he's not partial, all the way from sinners to people of great worldly attachment, to the people of the sages. Everyone can worship at any point in their life. There is no qualification to even begin this path of devotion, as was seen by the story of Angulimala, which we saw. Angulimala was this bandit in the forest, and he had, he comes across Buddha. Until then, he was in this habit of killing people and, hanging this, on his neck, the necklace of the anguli, of the finger thing. But even for such a person, when Buddha just asked him to follow him, and when at a point he stopped and Angulimala asks him, why are you stopping? Buddha just tells him that, well, I have stopped, but have you stopped? So then Angulimala gets the purport of that, what he was trying to say, which is trying to show that he was still continuing to kill people without knowing why he was doing it. So that is the idea behind, is the value of right resolve here. Once anybody has that resolve to change or to change the mindset, that person is the ready candidate for moving further. That's the state of evolution. So ultimately, you will see how Krishna ends the whole chapter by saying that ultimately, just whatever we do, just keep my mind on me, become my devotee. And then just whatever I do, just perform my actions for me, surrender to me. So ultimately, that's where he's going to end with, and we will see that. So any, again, thoughts or questions?
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
On 30th verse from years. So what you said was, even more sinful people, if they worship me with devotion to none, else he should be regarded righteousness. What does that mean?
So let me come to the shloka actually. We can...
30.
30, yes, here. So here, the shloka says, Apichet su duracharaha bhajate mam ananya bhak sadhur eva samantavyaha samyak vyavastito hi saha. So we may think that, this person has done so many bad deeds. So who is the right adhikari? Who is the right adhikari to achieve that Ishvara Padam? Is it the person who has done so much of tapas? Is it the person who has actually done so much towards building a temple and everything? Those are the previous shlokas actually, and we'll go back and review that too. But what the shloka is saying, that even the most sinful person has the ability to reach Ishvara. Now, we tend to judge somebody, or we look through our own lens at somebody and say, this person is just not eligible at all. So, that person should not be allowed to do the work. And we have examples, we'll come to that too, in our Tamil literature. We think they're not eligible. But it is that person who makes the right resolve. That's what he's trying to say here. Samyak Vyavastita. The person, the second he decides to change, that person is already on his path much faster than perhaps any one of us. That's the thing that he's trying to say here.
Okay.
And that this is the story of Angulimala that we talked about last time, where, this person was killing and everything, doing that. But the minute Buddha came to his life, and Buddha just asked him this one question, what are you trying to do here? Who you have just not stopped, that thing. So the idea here is, even just one sentence changes somebody, And I remember the story of Shivaji and Shivaji's master, Samarth Ramdas. When Samarth Ramdas, he was going to, I think his family was trying to get him married. And um, and he was already, such a great soul. And while the marriage vows were taking place, um, and he was just about to get married, and there was this word called savdhan. Savdhan in Maharashtrian language. Savdhan is alert. Be, like alert. Alertness is this word savdhan. the second this priest said the word Savdhan, something just immediately struck Samarth Ramdas and he just ran away from there, you know. So the point was, in his case, are you alert? Are you really ready for this life? This, again, Grahastha life and everything, you're going to get into this, again, world of samsar. So this is your chance. Just get out. That's the way in his mind he understood the word Savdhan, and he just ran from there. So uh, we all, we don't know what kind of a baggage we have. For some people, they are probably already there, but there's just this one thing that, the guru has to come into the life or in different forms. And so that's the idea behind here. Even if the most sinful in our minds, the way where we look at that person, because again, we don't know what kind of good punyam that person may have done in the past.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. So in this previous shlokas, I just wanted to explain. So this shloka was, this was a previous section, so to speak. In the previous section, Ishvara is trying to say that he is the same to all beings. And there's nobody, na me dvesha na asti. He's neither too partial, nor does he, just because somebody doesn't do what they have to do or whatever. So, but those who worship me with devotion, they are in me, I'm also in them. So that was the 28th one. I just wanted to go one. Yeah. So, okay. Anyway, 28th is not necessarily connected, but 29th. But in a much previous shloka, he talks about, the person can be a great wealthy person. The person may be a great sage. Ultimately, the idea is the one who approaches him with devotion. Such a person is a person who is kind of has the right qualification to reach him. Yeah. So let's move on to the 31st shloka. So as we saw, when we just have to make the resolve that ultimately Krishna, Ishvara is there to help me in anything. I just need him and him alone. That's all I need in my life. That is the devotion which Krishna is asking. So he further states, that to have this resolve is to, first of all, that, I need that absolute peace, but I need to make sure that I want to turn my attention completely. Earlier, my attention would have been for getting, all the worldly objects and everything. We never really think about getting that. We think that we'll get the peace and happiness through worldly objects, but now the idea is to get the happiness from my own self. So just that aspect of it, he says in 31, the second I make this resolve, Krishna says, I'm there for you. It's like that fast. It's just like, snapping of fingers. Kshipram, So I'll just chant the shloka here. Kshipram bhavati dharmatma. Kshipram bhavati dharmatma. Shashvat shantim nigacchati. Shashvat shantim nigacchati. Kaunteya pratijanihi, Kaunteya pratijanihi, na me bhakta pranashyati, na me bhakta pranashyati. So, like I said, a person like Angulimala, and we'll do two of the examples here. The second the person makes a resolve, or the second the person makes a kind of a U-turn, immediately the whole life itself changes for that kind of a person. So Kshipram Bhavati Dharmatma, he becomes immediately, he attains that Shashvat Shantim Nigachati. He attains that eternal peace. So Kaunteya Pratijanihi, he says, there is just no doubt at all that absolutely it's possible because I will never let you down. That's what he's saying. Name Bhakta Pranashriti. You are very important. You as my Bhakta is the most important, and therefore I will never ever forsake you. So he becomes immediately eligible for that secret that he talks about, the profound secret, you know. So that's the kind of resolve that one needs to have. And when that resolve is there, Krishna says, I'm there, right there for you. I'm not far away at all. And in previous ones, when he says, you are already in me, it's like that quickly you have already achieved this. So here, the two stories we have, the first one, which you see on the top, is the story from Ramayana, of course. And this is about Tulsi Das. The question is, how did Ratnakar, we talked about Angulimala in the previous one, but here, how did this Ratnakar transform into this Maharishi Valmiki? We, uh, we know the story of Valmiki about how he was, he was in the forest and he used to do the deeds, and he thought that was all normal, that he had to do it, until Narada questioned him, why are you doing this? Why are you doing all this? He said, well, I'm doing this because I'm doing this for my sake of my family. And then Narada questions him. He says, okay, why don't you go to your family and ask them, um, if he didn't do it, would they be happy or anything? And the family said, well, so long as you're doing, I'm okay. I'm happy with this. And, otherwise, so he kind of gets this answer at the end that he needs to look for something bigger, and he starts to meditate, right? So he says, I'm no more Ratnakar. I'm on my way to become a Valmiki, So he does through devotion, through the name of, by just devoting the name of Rama, he becomes, such a great soul. So that is one story of Valmiki. Does anybody have any other stories that you want to say before we go to Tulsi Das's story? So the story of Tulsi Das is also another great example. As you know, he's the author of actually the Ramayana written in Sanskrit. And he had this great passion for his wife. And once his wife went to her father's house without telling him, and he just could not bear the separation. And he goes all the way just to, be with her, and even climbs he climbs up to his wife's room using what he thinks is actually a rope, but it's actually a snake. And he doesn't even mind this, and he goes there, and his wife just looks at him, and he asks him, this devotion with which, or this passion with which you have come to see me, if you can only turn that as devotion to Rama, where would you can achieve so much more. So immediately that one sentence from his wife just pushes him, and he realizes what he had done. So it was kind of this U-turn for him, and eventually he realizes Sri Rama. So that's basically what this shloka is trying to say. Such a person can attain immediate peace when that force or the power reaches in their lives.
Hari Om.
Yeah, Anand.
Just looking at the previous sloka, one Kshipram Bhavati, sloka. So and then the one before Apichetu Durachar. So,
Yeah.
so Bhagavan accepts anyone, at any stage. So yeah, and then the examples of Ratnakar, and then they are, they're powerful examples. Yeah,
Right,
and
exactly.
just to my thinking more on that, Bhagavan is open to everyone. That's what it conveys
Correct.
to anyone at any stage.
Mm-hmm.
Not that someone thinks, okay, it's not for me, or it's only for me. So it's for any stage. And the other powerful message is like, the change is a complete change. Like
Mm-hmm.
for example, Ratnakar, he didn't go back. He always,
Mm-hmm.
he did penance. Then he became Maharshi. He put the Ramayana. So,
Mm-hmm.
there has to be a complete change, from what they are. So that's the powerful, message. It's not that, someone thinks, okay, I can, it's not good in a negative way, that, I
Mm-hmm.
can, reach God, or at any time, even though I'm doing not righteous things right now. So that should not be the message. Just my thought.
Right, exactly. I mean, and this change can also happen only when with complete conviction. We may listen to, we may read a lot of stories, we may listen to a lot of lectures, but if I don't take some time off to reflect upon this, and after reflection start to practice it, slowly start to practice this aspect of devotion, it won't happen. For some people it will happen very quickly, like in the case of Tulsidas, right? Tulsidas, it was just, he just needed that sort of a whiplash statement from his wife, and it happened. But then in his case too, it's his mind was definitely ready for it. He had done enough already, enough punyam from his past, that sometimes just as one statement, it's actually, in recent times you had this Malcolm Gladwell, right? Malcolm Gladwell's one book, bestseller book, which is called The Tipping Point. And in that tipping point, he gives a lot of examples. He gives his example of actually Mahatma Gandhi. He says about, how Mahatma Gandhi was traveling in this train in South Africa. And even though in his mind he had all these thoughts about how the Indians were treated in South Africa, and he wanted to do something about it, it was not until he sat in the first class train and there was this other person who came in, who sat there and was not very happy to see somebody like Mahatma Gandhi, who was brown skinned, sitting there. And immediately, this guy just threw his bags out into the station, and because of which Mahatma Gandhi had to get down also. And I think that sense of uh, that feeling that Mahatma Gandhi went through at that moment was kind of a tipping point. So it was not as if just that one action that did it, but it was that cumulative aspect of every the kind of treatment that Indians were going through. All that was in his mind, but that one thing was a tipping point. So for Valmiki, for Ratnakar, when Narada came into his life and asked that question, or for Tulsidas with this one, though they were the kind of tipping points. So we have these examples. So this is not to sidetrack too much, but what I want to point out is this is the glory of our own Indian knowledge system here. We have all these examples which tells us about um, how we can change, right? And also stories which allow us to evolve further. But then when we have books like this Malcolm Gladwell's book and all that, of course we're able to relate to the stories, but sometimes we also get carried by by the way this book would have been written, and we think, okay, so this tipping point is great, but now if we relate that to what is there in the stories, it allows us to think about, okay, what is really my purpose? What is the tipping point for me to move forward, you know? So just something to think about here.
Harvam, also Bhakta Dhruva, like he, all he wanted was to be a king, or or sit on his dad's lap. I think
Right.
that's what started. And his mother advises him to, to do penance or to pray Lord
Mm-hmm.
Narayana, so that he will, he can become a king or he will get his equal share. So that's
Mm-hmm.
all the wish he started with.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it just changed, and then he did such a deep penance that he got the moksha.
Correct.
So
Right.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
This
So that was a tipping point for him.
right.
Yes.
is that the stepmother
Yes,
refused the Dhruva to not to sit on the lap, and then his
Correct.
mother
yes,
said, "Okay,
yeah,
you have to do." And then Narada came into the forest, and then like that's a story, right?
That is the
right, right.
story. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
On the same lines for Prahlada, it was not really a tipping point for him, but it was his devotion through and spending the time in the forest and, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, right? So he just meditated on Bhagwan that way, and then, he attained liberation, right?
Yes.
So, whereas here the stories here is more connected with apichet suduracharaha. So that was the previous, as Anant had pointed out, so it doesn't matter who the person was, but the second the resolve is made, Krishna is already there to help us.
Mhm.
We can start at any point in time. We don't need to necessarily wait for getting into Vanaprasi stage to get to that. That is the other aspect of it.
Yeah, what Anand said was a very good example. It's a 5-year-old boy, and he
Mm-hmm.
meditates, and then God comes to him. So no matter what the age is, it's only
Correct.
devotion.
Correct. So this is just, I want to bring it up to all of you. How do we make this as relevant in this day and age? A lot of these stories and everything, because this is again trying to show this. We are not trying to run away from being ambitious or anything, right? So we want to help our next generations that they need to do what they need to do, but the attitude needs to change, right? The attitude of dedicating it to a higher purpose. It's something to think about. Maybe, yeah, go ahead, Anand. You
Yeah,
had something to
Harvam.
say?
Yeah, some of the stories they inspire. For example, Dhruva and Prahlada, they were, they were being the kings. They ruled their kingdom. At the same
Mm-hmm.
time, they had the devotion for, the God. So they could achieve both. I mean, right? They
Mm-hmm.
didn't go, you know, go like a into the forest and then away from people. So there are some examples. And King Janaka, was always he was always considered as a uh, bhakta, and then also one who is, I would say, attained moksha, like
Mm-hmm.
from beginning, and then he was, so, and then with all this penance or with all this punyam, Sita, like Mahalakshmi is born to him. So
Mm-hmm.
so they could do whatever they are doing, and then continue with the devotional path.
Yeah,
Well, I think that could be a message for
true.
people.
But how do we relate it to today's world of our youngsters? That's where I'm coming to is at the end of the day, like for example, everybody is looking for that peace, Shashwat Shantam. It doesn't matter. Even um, any living being is looking for being at peace, and for our youngsters too, this is an important thing that even as much as we're looking for it, how can these stories give them that aspect of how they should act in this world? Because at the end of the day, all these things are telling us about dedication and surrendering our actions, correct? So that's, I'm just trying to make sure that, the chapters of Bhagavad Gita need to establish a certain level of relevance for our kids. So something to think about. Maybe next week we can have a short reflection on this. So moving on. So in shloka number 32, a pretty very and a very interesting shloka from a point of view of it might even appear as controversial, but needs to be understood in its right context. So, we spoke about, okay, in this about, how we have, what is the trigger? So what is the trigger to become, to get to the feet of Ishvara, right? So in this shloka here, in the next one, he's actually going to talk about what are the other kinds of people. So we talked about, bandits and so-called bad people. But in the next one, he's actually talking about a situation which, okay, maybe I should do the shloka and then you will see what we're coming to. Mam hi partha vyapashritya Mam hi partha vyapashritya ye pisyu papa yonaya ye pisyu papa yonaya striyo vaishyas tatha shudraha striyo vaishyas tatha shudraha te piyanti param gatim te piyanti param gatim. So he says, Mam hi partha vyapashritya. So for taking refuge in me, O Partha, Mam hi. So in me, O Partha, O Arjuna, for taking refuge, they also who may be of sinful birth. Ye apisyu papa yonayaha. Those people who may be of sinful birth. And who are they? He's referring to Stri, women, Vaishyas, Tatha Shudraha, even they attain the supreme goal. So, the minute we read a verse like this, we are like, oh, where is Krishna going with this, right? Does that mean that women and Vaishyas and Shudras, they're not eligible for it? Because, he had already talked about the kings in one of the previous shlokas. So kings are Rajas, they represent Rajas there. So, they're okay with it and all that, but these people are not eligible. So it's very important to understand the shloka in its right context here. So when he refers to Stri, he's not referring to Stri as a woman in the way we would understand a physical woman, So he's trying to show that, and the reason why for bringing this here at that point, because you can think about, it was at a stage, in the stage where people were probably, maybe there was some kind of discrimination, maybe it could be thought that way. But the key thing here to be understood is women, not necessarily in the physical form, but women in the emotional aspect of it, he's saying. So from that point of view, he's referring to as women. Vaishyas, traders, basically traders, they're mostly dealing with inert things like money or, trade things, which is things in kind. So that way. And Shudraha with the laborers who are, again, because of caste discrimination, one may think that laborers are the people who are just the people who are the lowest rung of the society or something. But he's not referring to that way. He's basically trying to say that, everybody is equal And he's actually trying to bring about the level of equality that needs to be thought about. And if at all anybody may have an idea that these people are not eligible, he's trying to say, no, that is not true. Everybody is eligible to attain that param gatim, to reach that highest goal here. So that's the key thing that needs to be taught here. So that's the whole idea of symbolism, is that trying to say that basically, like I said, women in general, when you think about, is it's only the aspect of emotional aspect, or that. So everybody, whoever has that high level of detachment or bhakti or devotion, so they are qualified to attain this supreme goal here. So then finally in Shloka 33, he concludes this glory of devotion by asserting that everyone, including Brahmins, sages, Rajarishis, etc., can attain this. And in describing this, he describes actually the three types of thing. And this is, we see the shloka here. Kim punar brahmana punya, kim punar brahmana punya, bhakta rajarshayastata, bhakta rajarshayastata, anityamasukham lokam, anityamasukham lokam, imam prapya bhajasva mam, imam prapya bhajasva mam. So then he says, kim punaha brahmanaha punyaha. What then to speak of these holy brahmanas, bhaktaha, rajarshayah tata, and the royal sages, who recognize about this impermanent and the joyous anityam, which is nityam means permanent, anityam means impermanent, asukham, lokam, this impermanent joyous, having obtained it, they just worship me. So he's bringing about the glory of devotion. He's also bringing about the glory of those people who have truly understood the aspect of devotion, who have understood this knowledge. So people who have that knowledge, that is basically what he's talking here. So like I said in the previous shloka, if people with Vaishyas and Shudra qualities can also become great devotees of Lord, so then what to speak of these people who are by nature true Brahmanas and true Kshatriyas? In a sense, he's trying to show people who are completely devoted to their line of duty, which is what Rajarishis are. For them, this should be a piece of cake. That is what he's trying to show here. And ultimately trying to say that anybody, doesn't matter. So people who are pure-hearted with complete sattvic qualities, they have they are eligible to become the Lord's devotees. For them, so trying to say that, Arjuna, who is, why is he referring this to Arjuna? Because Arjuna is a great Kshatriya, and he's almost trying to say that even Arjuna, you have that ability to achieve this state here. Okay. And so finally, in shloka number 34, which we will see also today, because it's one of the most very popular shloka, very oft-quoted. And we'll do this shloka today, but then next week, we'll talk a little more about the bhakti element, which is mentioned here. He basically tries to tell him about how, it's kind of a take-home message, and he gives kind of a specific tangible instruction here, just to bring the whole teachings of this entire chapter into our life. And that is why just needs more discussion, which we will continue next week, but at least we'll do the shloka today. Manmana bhava mad bhaktaha, manmana bhava mad bhaktaha, madhyaji mam namaskuru, Madhyaji mam namaskuru. Mame vaishyasi yuktvaitam. Mame vaishyasi yuktvaitam. Atmanam mat parayanaha. Atmanam mat parayanaha. So, manmana bhava mad bhaktaha. Fix your mind only on me. Be devoted to me. So, this is why I said it's a take home message. It's almost, it brings to complete, it's a beautiful close here. So, manmana bhava mad bhaktaha. Madhyaji mam namaskuru. So just sacrifice onto me, bow down to me. Mam eva eshyasi yukta evam. So once when I do this, you shall come to me alone. Mam eva eshyasi. Atmanam mat parayanaha. Having united, taking me as the supreme goal here. So that it's just it's so complete in itself, all just fixing me. It's like, as I said, a take-home message, something which we need to think about it here even more. Be devoted to me, sacrifice unto me, bow down to me, you shall come to me alone. So who are the things? What he's saying is, the jnani, who is fix your mind on me, says the Lord, and the bhakta, the upasaka. So these are the four kinds of people here. All of them, he says, just fix, referring to, so the jnani is the one who fixes the mind completely, the bhakta, and this is again, he's referring to mad bhaktaha, madhyaji mam namaskuru, the upasaka. Whatever the person does, the person is doing only for attaining that Ishvara, and the disciple aspect of it. So we'll take this shloka up for more discussion next week. But any questions or any thoughts?
Hari Om, this one shloka, if we can understand, it's a meditative verse. Fix your mind on me, be devoted to me, sacrifice unto me, bow down to me, you shall come to me alone, having united yourself. The essence of everything is right here. If we can take home, like you say, if we can take home the message, this is a meditative verse, and I mean, it's his grace and his mercy that he keeps repeating the message again and again and again without tiring. He doesn't get tired. 700 shlokas, he's saying the same thing again and again and again in so many different ways for us to get the message. It is his grace and it is his.
Correct. Yeah, he wants us to keep on contemplating on him and to perform any action we do, doing it only for him. And the more and more we do it, this is the only way that our own finite self of ours, right? This gets subdued and we get kind of converted into all the words that he says, which he's referring to. Who are the kinds of people? They are the jnanis, they are the bhaktas, they are the upasakas, they are the true shishyas, disciples. Any situation we encounter, anything is there which is coming into my life only to teach me on how to be a better person, and the better person is, the better people are becoming that bhakta or jnani in everyone. So that is the kind of an end result really of the purpose of our lives. It is the ultimate thing that we need to achieve in our lives, and is to make that Ishvara our goal, our refuge, if you want to say it that way. And that is the only way we can actually um, fulfill the reason why we've taken this birth. So we will see a very, very similar verse which will come again in the 11th chapter. So like I said, next week we'll reflect a little more on this shloka here, and then we will chant the whole 9th chapter. And if anybody wants to discuss on which shloka appealed to you, if you can prepare a short summary for that shloka, that would be great. And to Suvarna's point, how can we take any of the shlokas in chapter 9, including this last one, as a meditative verse for ourselves? Because the more and more we think about this, reflect, it becomes a habit. We are a creature of habits. We are very good with, creating habits out of very simple things. And so why not we make a habit of taking one of these shlokas, meditating upon it, contemplating upon it every day, so that it becomes part of ourself and points and becomes a guiding light for us to reach our ultimate goal. So, sorry, I have the date wrong here. We'll meet next week, same time. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Let me stop the recording.